All right. Well, good morning, good evening, everyone. This is the 14th Notary Governance Sync of 2022. It's July 26th. And we have a very full agenda here. So let's take a look at what we're going to be covering on this call. We stick with the same basic format. So if you're watching this for the first time, we kind of start with hellos, intros, make sure everyone on the call is a participant. We are going to cut down the metrics today and just quickly give a quick overview. That way we have more time for the community discussions because we have a very full agenda of many points to bring up today. So with that, again, we are your friendly governance team. That's Steve, Galen, myself, and Jeff. Any help you need or any kind of troubleshooting or direction would be the ones to kind of fork you off where you need to go. We're in the Filecoin Slack if you have questions, as well as the repo for anything you may need. We are piloting a new project on this call. It may or may not work. What it is, it's a system called Otter. It sits in on these calls. It listens to the voices that's taking place, and then it provides a transcription service after the call in the form of an SRT file. We can then have that SRT file translated so that those of you who are Mandarin speaking or non-English speaking, you can then have the translation service available. This is the first time that we're testing it in mass, so hopefully we work the bugs out for this call, but you may notice an Otter sync, and just letting you know that in addition to this call being recorded for the video on YouTube, there will be that transcription that runs with it. If you're on the call and you're participating, having more information on your name makes it really, really helpful to kind of route where your questions are coming from and where you are as a participant on this. So you can see our name right now in Kevin Filecoin Foundation. Makes it really easy to route it. If you wouldn't mind right-clicking on your name and just being like, you know, Kevin Notary or Jim Notary or Jim Community Participant, that way when we're answering your questions in Slack or we go back into GitHub, it makes it really easy to line up. Otherwise, some of your valuable feedback may get lost in the call as we start getting these big discussions going. If you're joining the call, please make sure that you follow this link. We'll post it there in chat. This is what this page looks like. The notaries that are on this call, you would have got a DM from me in the last couple of days and weeks, just making sure I've got your participation logged. What we do is we come back here and we pull this for the SLA. So you just make the call date, your organization, and your name. For those of you that are not notaries and that you're coming to these calls, I highly recommend you fill this out too, and you can just put community member or other. This lets us kind of see who's really active in the program, who's just popping in. And then that way, if you do submit an application for a notary later on in the future, we can kind of build this under your reputation score and that you're participating. So please, I encourage all of you, not just notaries, to fill this out. That way we can kind of have a record and kind of route you to the best places to get you the support you need. So with that, quick look at metrics. We pulled this metric page from this statistics that you'll see in the link, and I shared this slide deck in the Slack Notary channel, excuse me, the Phil Plus channel. So if you want to follow along and see these yourself. The quick thing to update is you'll see some of these times have just skyrocketed. Like our average time to data cap, it's gone up a day, our average time to LDN. We're really diving into these numbers, and what they are is some outdated proposals and LDN applications that are super long, and they've just been waiting for some kind of question or allocation. And when those are 80, 90, 100 days, what those do is those really affect the metrics that come on. So Galen posted in the Notaries channel a couple of days ago with 9 applications. We'll be following up on that list just to kind of get those numbers that are outliers really impacting this pipeline. And so to do that, just like we showed on last week, what we've been doing is pulling some of these really large applications that we're waiting, sending specific pings. So notaries, if you see that come across, that's the reason why we're giving those a little bit of extra attention to get those off, to make sure that we don't have these elevated time to data caps that are really skewing the network. So that's a quick overview of the call, quick overview about who the members of the community team are, and a quick overview of the metrics. This is the specific agenda that we're going to walk through on the call today. And as you can see, it's broken into 6 main points. So the first thing we're going to talk about is just a reminder that the August call times are going to be shifting as a pilot. We're going to be talking a quick review of the LDN out of cycle update that we proposed last week, give you one last chance to provide feedback. We got a lot of great input on that issue. Kevin Z will be walking us through an enterprise proposal pilot that he's put together. We're going to be talking about Project Beacon. I know that we had a lot of discussions in that GitHub issue, so this is a chance to kind of ask additional clarifications or kind of share any thoughts you may have. Galen's going to take us through the LDN notary disclosures. We shared this on the last call. We have some updates on these 5, and then just give you a chance to weigh in on it. Then we also have a callback to an issue that came back in September, and that's the LDN process. Just checking in, it's been a half year, and so Galen's going to kind of spend some time walking through that. Since it's such a discussion-heavy call, we kind of went through the metrics a little bit faster, but we do have the links there if you want to see them. And we might kind of allocate some time. I would request that if we do have discussions that you raise your hand in the Slack. It makes it really easy to circle back. Any questions that you want to kind of come to, posting in chat, Galen, myself, or Jeff and Deep will be kind of checking that chat and making sure that we can post those questions. So with that, I will jump into just the quick 2 slides about the updates, and I'll hand it over to Kevin Z. So first update, the governance meeting time starting in the next 2 weeks in August is going to shift back, not this call, but the next call. And so you can see the current times is going to shift to 6 p.m. California time, 0100 Beijing. If you are curious to follow this calendar, we shared this link in the Notary channel here as it loads. And what this will do is this is a shared Google Calendar that will then allow you to add this to your own schedule. That way you might not be relying on me. Human, I make typos. I think I posted July 25th versus the 26th. So I won't let that load too long. But just as a quick reminder, that afternoon call is going to shift, and hopefully we see a lot more friendly faces on that second call. This one up for discussion. We talked about this on the last notary governance call, and essentially what this boils down to is we have 2 very active notaries. They did not apply for re-election. They were not rejected in the re-election. They were great with their data cap as that stood, but because they didn't go through that election process in the off cycle, we didn't allocate them to LDN. So this proposal was talking about 2 things. One was getting these 2 notaries on to the LDN, but maybe a higher level root issue to kind of have for discussion is, as a community in Fil Plus, how are we approaching off-cycle changes that are outside of the election process? Do we want to constantly hold elections every 2 or 3 months and put notaries through that? Or do we want to have it be a relatively low lift issue? So if you haven't had a chance to reply to this issue, it's proposal 568. It's linked in the thread of this document. Kind of thinking about it from the lines of like, how do we adjust these settings for these people that are participating? Galen and I and Deep are going to reach out to those 2 notaries, see if they're comfortable just saying a quick hello, maybe have them post in the notaries channel. That way, if you notaries have any questions for them, they can answer it, kind of get a feel for their track record on LDNs. But again, as a refresh, these are applicants, or excuse me, notaries that are in good standing, have no suspicious activity. They just wish to allocate on the LDN V3, and currently they're blocked because they didn't go through this very specific process. So if you had any thoughts on this, we talked about it last week. This is kind of the last call on this GitHub issue, and then we'll do a final thread in the Slack. So if you have any thoughts, please post it in that GitHub repo. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Kevin Z from Protocol Labs. He's going to kind of walk us through the updates on the File Enterprise proposal.
Thanks, Kevin. Hi, everyone. I'm also Kevin Z. Actually, Kevin, if you flip to the next slide, that'll kind of help me kick things off with my flow here. So as most of you know, on previous calls over the past few months, Meg Dennis from Holland was sort of leading the charge on an enterprise program proposal. And that was put together in June, posted in the GitHub repo. And since then, I've taken over as the project lead to help push this project forward through the remaining phases. So what I just wanted to cover today quickly over the next few minutes was a brief update on kind of where we were, where we are, and go through some more details related to the project. So next slide, please. Okay, so just as a quick refresher for those of you who weren't involved in some previous calls, Meg was on multiple times to discuss this project, but there's a broad need for support of enterprise non-public data. There's actually a lot of active requests going through the current system that aren't scalable, that require a lot of support. And so the idea behind this project and this proposal was to create a proposition that will allow full support of the Filecoin purpose, the goals and the principles, and enable us to support world's private data through this program as well. Now, what at a broad level, the pilot timeline was the approval of the proposal, which is number 559. There's a link to that. You can go and read through all the details of the proposal. That's already been out there, and a lot of comments and feedback have come in for that. And where we are right now, so we've sort of approved that proposal. We're in the planning phase, which will be the next 2 to 3 months. And that's going to let us design the program. I'm going to talk more about the details of this phase on the next slide, but this is really where we're going to design the program in detail. And there's a lot of opportunity for the members of the community to be involved and to discuss some of the key pieces of that. And then finally, the goal is to complete the planning phase. And then by October, hopefully we'll be able to kick off a proof of concept pilot over the next 6 months there. That'll go from October through April. So next slide. Okay, so just a quick overview of what we're calling the planning phase and the timeline here. So right now, this week and the past week, I've reached out to several notaries who've expressed interest in participating in what we're calling the eFil Plus pilot, Enterprise Fil Plus pilot. And I tagged them on number 579, just to review what we're requesting from them in terms of service level expectations and the commitment to the program. So for those of you that are interested, please see that issue and discussion topic, and feel free to chime in there. I've also positioned several proposals that are open for discussion with the community. So you'll see in the next bullet there, over the next 2 weeks, I'd love to open up discussions on each of these topics related to designating a lead SP as part of an enterprise program. What are the data distribution rules to be established upfront? What are the data cap allocation enhancement potential requirements and expectations? And then also, in terms of KYC mechanisms for enterprise. So we have separate discussion topics that are open for everyone to go in, read through some of the proposals, and provide feedback and review for us there. So the goal would be to come back in 2 weeks on the next notary governance call and potentially have a little bit more time to open up some discussions for those things there. So I would hope all of you to take a chance over the next 2 weeks to go in and provide any feedback or comments that you might have. And if we have any time today, we can also jump in a little bit on that. But this is just a high-level overview. So the next point here, so starting August 1st, and this is sort of the big piece of the puzzle for a lot of people, we're looking for SPs to submit an expression of interest to participate in the upcoming pilot. So I don't know, Kevin, if you can actually click on that link there. I've put together a website that goes through the eligibility and the details for SPs who are interested in participating in the pilot. I know there's a lot of interest out there in the community. I've heard personally, and other people have expressed to me, but this is going through sort of the criteria we're looking for if you want to participate, not only from an SP perspective, but from a client perspective, and then all the additional details related to timeline, phases, and those types of things. So I would encourage everyone to please go through, review those details, provide any feedback. Again, at this point, this is just a proposal. This is a broad sort of overview that we're hoping to include as part of this program. So then, continuing on here, over the next month in August, we're going to be spending a lot of time going through and building out and designing this enterprise pilot in more detail. Meg put together a lot of framework that we're going to use, and we're going to use a design thinking MVP methodology to go through and review all the different requirements that are from when a client starts all the way up until a client receives data cap and goes through the program there. So there'll be a lot of potential meetings. I'll reach out. We'll have discussions within the working group. So keep that in mind. You're all welcome to participate in those discussions and help provide feedback towards this program. That's also going to involve a lot of potential tech and tooling development. So we're looking for KYC automation as part of this pilot. We're looking for a broader landing page for clients to come in and apply and enter their information. which will sync directly with our GitHub repo. And there'll be potentially a lot of legal templates and contract structures that we'll need to hash out. And then once that is done over the next few months, the idea would be to confirm we have everything in place that we want, and then we'll kick off the pilot in October with the SPs that have signed up, with the clients that they have ready, and we'll go through and we'll run this proof of concept from start to finish over about a 6-month period. Next slide, please. So that's it. I just wanted to give a quick overview of where we are with the planning phase. I'll post this presentation. All of the discussion topics are listed within the repo, so feel free to go into each of those and read through the details. And the general proposal, number 559, is also out there if you need to go back and refresh yourself on what is included in this enterprise program. Again, the plan will be to come back in 2 weeks and maybe have a broader open discussion on some of the topics if we want to, once we have some feedback and some ideas on what members of the community are thinking. And I'm also encouraging everyone to join the Slack channel. There's a Phil Plus Enterprise Working Group Slack channel that's open. Feel free to join that. I'll be posting more information there as well, and offering potential meetings and some working group sessions on a lot of the customer journey and the tech requirements that will be upcoming over the next month and a half. I'll pause there. I don't know if there was any questions or thoughts at this time.
Yeah, one question, Julian. Do you already have clients that are interested in participating?
No. Well, Galen, maybe you can chime in here as well. I think there are several clients, several LDN applications that are active that potentially meet the criteria of this project. So there are clients who have applications that include private data that will be a struggle to get through the current flow, but as part of this pilot, they would be very welcome. So I think the idea will be to include those applications as part of this. And I don't have the detail on exactly those, but we'll be working through some of those open applications. I'll get some details from Galen and others who have more details there. But just more broadly to answer your question, the idea is for SPs to really be the lead BD in the lead BD role here. So they're bringing in their own clients that they might have gone through discussions with. They have ideas around the data, around their requirements, and they're going to lead the client through this process.
Thank you for leading this effort. It's really important for the program.
Welcome. Yes, we realize the importance, and we're excited to keep this moving forward. All right, Kevin. Well, I think that's it for me today. Like I said, everyone, please go to the discussion topics. Please leave feedback. Join the Slack channel. We'll continue moving forward, and in 2 weeks, we'll potentially have a more broader, open discussion around some of the proposals that are out there right now. Thank you.
Nice. So the next item on the agenda is 564. This is Project Beacon. We're going to drop the link right here in the chat, but I'm going to turn it over to Galen and Deep because this had a lot of activity. You just want to kind of give it a voice as we go through.
Yeah, happy to talk about this one. Thanks, Kerry. So for those of you that were actually, a lot of you participated in this conversation over the course of the weekend. Started to get a little bit more interesting on Friday with a lot of questions coming up. And I think it's continuing to be a bit of a hot topic. And so I just wanted to do like a quick recap of what I think the summary of the conversation, if you're not caught up, and then a couple of the main outstanding points for this particular case. So effectively, this started out as an application to store a bunch of what was flagged as educational content. Actually, I don't know. Is Eric on the line? He mentioned that he might be able to come.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, cool. So Eric, I'm going to do a quick intro, and then you please correct anything that I'm saying, if you don't mind. And maybe the client is here as well. That'd be great. But basically, started out as an application for uploading about 11 petabytes of unique educational content, which would have ended up requiring a footprint of about 60 petabytes on chain. And there was like, pretty clear documentation up front on where the schools were that were sourcing the data, as well as where the data would be going. So the list of storage providers where the data would be going. And there were a couple of questions that were coming up, but they were being addressed in GitHub as well as in Slack. I think on Friday, a question came up around like the actual encoding of the videos, where like some of the numbers weren't adding up in terms of like how big the video files would be, or just in general, there was like seeked clarification on what, like how that much content would come together for educational videos. And I think the main takeaway was that the definition of education videos was like slightly different, where instead of it just being like classroom videos that some of us might be more familiar with, this was like videos sourced from educational institutions that included beyond just like classroom recordings. So it was like recordings from cameras inside of classrooms for like in classroom time, but then also recordings of just general like premises, which are required, I think, in the region where this data is being collected, or are useful in the region where the data is being collected. And so a lot of discussion was happening on whether or not something that's outside of like just educational video is useful by the definition of like Filecoin Plus's usefulness. There was some discussion on generally like video surveillance overall, and like where, like what place that has in the Filecoin Plus program is like encrypted data that is not useful in use cases beyond this. There was question around like, what is the purpose of supporting private encrypted data on Filecoin Plus? Like in which cases should we be doing it versus not? And then towards the end, where it's sort of headed right now is like, hey, ultimately, notaries are the ones that are the fiduciaries of the network that are getting to help support that decision more than like individuals that might have strong feelings about what is useful versus what is not. And so ultimately, the burden of proof lies with the client or with like the proxy of the client to earn the trust with the notaries. And so where we're at now is like ensuring that we do have a set of notaries that actually want to approve this application. There are a number of notaries that are interested in learning more about it. And so either Eric or I think the actual client is following up with that set of notaries to pull them in under NDA and show them samples of the data. There's a subset of notaries that have already done that and are happy to support the application that span a couple of regions. So we're just double checking to make sure we've got the right set to make sure we can proceed. And then, from a community standpoint, when you can validate through a notary whether or not the data is useful, the only other piece of data we have is the storage providers they're choosing to work with. So I just went through that list and posted my opinion on that, where I'd love to understand like how some of the SPs were chosen, because most of, if not all of them, don't really have like deal-making presence on the chain. And so just wanted to figure out that. And that's probably how we'll proceed, like a combination of notaries that are able to get under NDA, come back with opinions and can share them, ensuring that we have coverage and support from enough notaries, and ensuring that we have enough information about the storage providers. Is there, for those of you that are participating in the topic, is there anything major that I missed? Anything you want to add? Or Eric, you have the floor if you want to share some more details.
Yeah, could you please give me the share the screen? I'd like to show something interesting in the Chinese file market, and also answer the questions which you left on the GitHub.
Yes, give me a minute. I'm going to stop and I'm going to let you share. All right, Eric, you should have the ability to share screen now.
Okay. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to talking about which you might don't know in Chinese market, especially for the Filecoin ecosystem, the SPs in China. So I'm going to talk about the SPs first, because this is the foundation of the Filecoin network. During the last years in China, the nationals released the national laws and the regulations, the anti for the crypto mining in China, and also the top SPs. I mean, for the Filecoin SPs was arrested in China, and also data center was forced to close somewhere. So you guys must know a couple of days ago, we are losing the more than 100 petabytes raw byte power. Yep, that's a big data center located in Inner Mongolia. was shut it down by the government, and also they cut the power, cut the network. So you know the reason. And also, how about now? How about the SP right now in China? So I'm going to name this to how to survive. So some of them, I think 20 of them go abroad, and also they're starting the new life there. And also you can see some Chinese investor in File Austin or even in File Toronto. That means the Chinese investor file holders go abroad to make new investment. And also, I think the rest of them, I think that 80% of them are still in China. Oh, I can say the word is the hiding themselves. Why? Because because everybody know, I mean, especially for the PSP, they know you guys are running the Filecoin Lotus node in a data center. So if you move out from the data center, you can to avoid it, the PSP to find you out. And also they use some technical support to hide their IP address. So regularly, so in my words, the SP in China right now, they are living like on the rather age, you know. So they move out from the data center, and also they hide their IPs on the internet, and otherwise the PSP will find you out through the communication operators. And also the client. So last October, the data security law of the People's Republic of China was released. That's why you can see only few, I mean, the less state-owned clients can join the Filecoin. So you can see right now the people who make the clients make the applications in a Filecoin is not the state-owned. Okay, so I'm not talking about the Filecoin economic model in China. I'm not quite sure that's quite different from the US or from the other side. So in the last 1 year, when the people would like to join the Filecoin network, there will be the investor ratio will be like the 50% for file and the hardware for 30%, and the Lotus operations for 20%. And this year's, they will change to file holder will be the 80%, and hardware will be decreased to 70%, and the Lotus operation, in other hand, we call it the outsourcing service, the technical support that is decreased to only 3%. So I'm going to answer the questions which you leave on the GitHub. So why is the lead SP system is not suitable for the project Beacon? Because during the above information which I provided, so no SP in China would like to take such a risk to do that, because why buy the best? So that's we are working as a coordinator between the SPs and the clients. Nobody would like to stand out and say, I would like to take the storage, work as a storage provider to making the storage from the client. Second thing is that, so you asked me, so can you share some details on how Project Beacon selected the storage provider they will be working with? So in order to meet the client's demands, and we need to help the client to find 12 SPs who are willing to invest that like 2 million each in the initial pledge, and also based on the Gallon's proposed model for the Project Beacon. As you guys can see, this is not an easy task. And also the top priority in finding SPs in the Project Beacon, we are focusing on having their enough files, because the selling the service is no longer to making any difference nowadays. So with this kind of the goal, we are distribute this task to more than 30 investment organizations. So after like rounds communication or selections, 12 of the investment organizations were willing to take the role of SP. And these 12 SPs are responsible for the corresponding capital's rising task. If they could not match, I mean, if they could not afford with themselves, they would like to require to be the responsible to recruiting more small SPs, I mean, to finding the files. So this is the top priorities. We would like to find in the SP who working with the project Beacon. And the third one is why new SPs with zero power and no margin address. So this is a very good point. So during the preparation of the project Beacon, some SPs created empty nodes for the how can I say that's created the empty nodes to stake for cleared asset for allocation in the future. So therefore, starting from the nodes with zero power is definitely the best choice for the investors who send the file. And the last one, why SPs may change the owner wallet when the project started. So the SPs in China means both service provider and storage provider. The provider with one-stop, this service storage provider, they provided the one-stop storage solutions. So let's say compare with the Web 2 storage provider like AWS or Google, they need to do one more thing. That's get the file. So so did you remember what I mentioned with the outsourcing service provided for the service provider? This is a very unique role in the ecosystem of China. Many storage provider having the same outsourcing team in charge of their Lotus operations. So compare with the individual storage provider in US, in North America, and in Europe, the Chinese file market is so different. So regarding to this information, so I hope Perk Labs, can understand how difficult situations with Chinese SP are facing with, and especially in this bear market. And I also hope the big family can grow up very soon, and those different ecological roles can be created to suit the Filecoin network and to be the better growth for Filecoin together. Yeah, that's on my side.
Thanks. I think there's one question or two questions in the chat from Wynand. Wynand, do you want to just share them?
Yeah, my question is basically why are you still pursuing to store this data inside China if it's not allowed anyway? Why not store it outside China? The data is encrypted. Nobody can read it except your client. So I don't understand why you're still pursuing to only do this with Chinese storage providers and not select providers in North America or Australia or Singapore or other providers somewhere else in Asia.
Yeah. That's a good question. So do you remember which I mentioned the data security law of the PRC? The educational data was not allowed to go abroad. This is a writing in the law. Nobody can do that.
But you're not allowed to store it anyway on Filecoin because Filecoin is not allowed. The miners are not allowed in China. So as service provider, you're not allowed to run there. So let's step.
It's not means. The average storage provider can terminate their sector and get the file out. Otherwise, the Filecoin network will be crashed because everybody knows Chinese SP is holding more than 50% of the power in the Filecoin network. Nobody can do that. That's why we say we are hiding themselves.
Yeah, I know that the situation is difficult, but my question is basically you're not, as SP, you're not allowed to run in China. Fine, I'm fine with that. If that's as it is, but why don't you store it outside China? If it's encrypted anyway, why don't you join the Fil Plus program and put it there so we can have governance and we can put it on miners where it's secure? Because if your client wants to retrieve it and your data center is closed, yeah, there's no use anyway. So why is this useful for the network then?
Finding these clients, the project Beacon, the client, they would like to use the Filecoin network, and also they would like to coordinate with others SPs. So this is a huge project. When Protocol Labs knows, I started this project in February of this. So regularly, we cannot stop it when the client is ready. And also we find the SP is ready. So if we jump out, we cannot make it.
I don't say you need to jump out. I say find your storage providers outside of China and put in Fil Plus.
Yeah.
Because
So
if
the data,
you're
the data is important.
yeah, I know it's important, but if you're storing in China and it's not allowed to store there, your data center gets closed, your SP gets closed, your SP gets arrested. So there's no use to do it over there because the data will be inaccessible anyway.
So the reason in China is, number one, the law is not allowed, and then number two is the SPs in China they set up their nodes all over the China, and also the client would they retrieve all the data, so it's in the China mainland. So no matter the website, the internet speed, and also the shipment for the hard disk, is quite easy for them to go abroad.
Yeah, Eric, I think the
Yeah.
question still stands on like, do you think that it is going to be realistic for those SPs to actually be able to store that data while staying in hiding in China, or do you think eventually they're going to move out anyway? Because I think what Wynand is bringing up is that, sure, you can do this, but then what's stopping those SPs from getting cracked down on and needing to like stop operating their data centers or needing to shut down their individual SP operations, or I don't know, get arrested? Like, what's stopping that from happening?
For me, it's hard questions. I don't know what's happened for the next or for the PSP we're doing, but through the SP which I reached, they try to protect themselves. There are a lot of ways to do that, because no one would like to terminate the sectors, and they would like to keep contribute in the Filecoin. So they will find their way.
Okay, so the interesting thing there is also around. Okay, sorry, Danny has a hand. Let's do that
Yeah,
first.
I think Danny has a hand.
Yeah.
I mean, so I came in late. I'm sorry, I was in another meeting. But like, I'm trying to pull together the argument here, which is, I think that the application of the prohibitions within China are ambiguous, and that means that they can be enforced in a number of different ways. And this is me sort of trying to steelman the response to you, Wijan, right? What we have, the argument is one of the ways that would help Filecoin gain legitimacy in China is having a legitimate Chinese storage use case, right? That isn't strange crypto nonsense, but is an actual applicable use. So this is a good version of that, right? The reason why it doesn't make sense to like just store it somewhere else if it's illegal within China or if it's illegal outside China is if you're trying to make the case for a legitimate system within China so that the storage providers have a stronger leg to stand on. The last thing you want to do is to break another law, right? Like another far clearer like regulation. So we're in this situation where, and people can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, right? Where there is ambiguity about whether distributed storage provision within China comes within the regulations or not. But there's a definite ban on moving this data, not localizing this data within the country. Is that a fair assessment of what's being said here?
I think so, and I think this is similar to what like Faye is bringing up, regarding enterprise Filecoin and like other use case examples of this, where in certain regions like Australia, there's data that will be encrypted that people will argue is useful and meaningful, and that legally shouldn't go out of that country and may be distributed around Australia to other interests. I think where some of the concern is, and I think that this is then the sort of next evolution of the question, which is what Wynand is also bringing up, is that how do we have confidence that if we approve that, if we're also saying that the government is going to crack down and we have ambiguity about who the storage providers are and they're trying to hide, how do we have confidence that this project will continue and they're not just going to get shut down or slash their sectors, or, so why, if what we are afraid of is that the legal situation in one region is they're going to come after, and so the solution for that is, well, why not distribute internationally? And then we say this is a circular argument because we can't distribute internationally because that's also illegal, and we're trying to find a way to distribute locally and gain confidence. So I think that we're sort of talking about, there's a problem down here, so why not this solution? But that solution violates this other problem, which is what we're trying to get around in the first place. And I do, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
But then I would say just store it with 1 or 2 SPs and see how that goes before you take down 11.
I see.
If you want to make a pilot, and your explanation was, by the way, very beautiful, and I do understand now what the situation is and what's happening. But then I would say just store it with 1 or with 2 and go make a case with the local government and try to see if you can get that approved. Because if you do it with 11, then you will face these people with another problem and they will start panicking and shut this thing down again. Maybe do it small scale, or yeah.
Mm-hmm. So right now the proposal is for 60 PIBs, but it's an 11 PIB data set. So maybe a possible solution is similar to how we're asking people to gain confidence slowly over time. Start with a smaller proof of concept with 1 clear storage provider for that one data set that is 11 PIBs, and go from there. I think these are some interesting proposals, and I think that's part of why we really want to have this conversation, and reach clarity on what is the situation and how do we build enough confidence to move forward, and what are we approving. I think there's a lot of conversation in the chat about enterprise fill, and then I also see that Alex has a hand. Alex, I'll give you the floor for a second if you've got a quick thing, because we are also running out of time.
Yeah, one point is that I feel the pain from the presentation that storage providers are having hard time and whatnot, but I think we gotta find out if the program is about helping storage providers or helping stakeholders survive. From what I understand, I don't think the program is about helping anyone survive. I think we are about encouraging and helping on board useful storage, and at least that was what was written in the first proposal. And I don't think part of making onboarding useful storage, I don't think helping stakeholders survive anyhow is part of that. And yeah, I think that's an issue we gotta think about and lay out if we want to be part of that role.
Well, yeah, I think it's a balancing
there's
act,
so
right,
much we can do.
We want the network to survive, and the network survives by the stakeholders continuing to come and offer their services. The stakeholders are SPs offering their services, but also clients taking up on their services, right? Surviving means we need the entire marketplace ecosystem to be robust and work for everyone who kind of wants to participate in it. So I think that yes, we care about people surviving, care about the SP's business surviving, we care about clients, being able to safely store data. We care about the integrity of that data, because those are things that impact, the trust in the network. And so if the network becomes a place where it is only not useful data and it doesn't have utility, why continue to do that, right? But if it's encrypted data, but it's encrypted and useful for certain users, like that's still really useful. But if it's just encrypted, but no one is actually using it and there is no retrieval, and we don't know that it's actually good, useful data, that's not helpful.
Yeah, but
right?
that specific
that
function
juggling.
of that specific function of helping survive, helping anyone survive. I don't think that's specific to this program. That can be part of. We can't take that into account, but I think that may be part of a new program, not Filecoin Plus.
Yeah.
Not specifically helping
maybe that's where,
storage providers
where
survive.
enterprise fill comes in.
Yeah,
I'm going to kick it to Kobe, then Eric, and then I think we'll have to move on.
It's Kobe.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to add something that this kind of like crypto ban mining situation could be happen in anywhere else in all over the world, like maybe in other countries in Asia or in Europe as well. Like it's not highly likely to happen in the United States, but it's highly likely to happen to other countries for like the general like crypto bans and stuff. So like, but like if these kind of things happen, like we as a like Filecoin network, we definitely want these kind of existing storage providers to serve the network, right? That's the like the broader vision of the Filecoin, like that everyone else can store the file to protect the whole network. So I mean, this is not just a question for the like Chinese region; it's for the general, question for the whole network. Yeah,
it's a good point. Maybe we give final thoughts to Eric, and then we move on to the next issue. So, Eric, do you have any closing thoughts briefly that you wanted to add to this?
Yeah, actually, so I'm going to share more information about this. So with a law, which was Danny Bryan mentioned, breaking another law. Actually, Chinese government is not allowed for mining, but not encourage. I mean, they also encourage the people to making the storage. So if you are running a mining node, it's not allowed. But you are running with the storage provider as a storage provider, you are not mentioning about any things about the cryptocurrencies. It's okay. So that's why we pick up the storage providers. They only using their power to make all the special license to running DC a data center with the storage provider. I mean, only making the things connected with the client. I mean, because the Project Beacon is education group. It's a very huge education group. So with this kind of a business they are running too, they are legal in China. That means they are making the backup. I mean, a cloud business for a very huge education system. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Good point. We'll shift the rest of this conversation back to Slack and GitHub. Eric, everybody, thank you for your input on that. I think that we probably moved that forward quite a bit. Galen, I'm going to turn this over to you for the Notary disclosures.
Yes. So this is another similar conversation topic. It's come up a few times. We don't have a ton of time to dive into it here. Let me post the link. It's gotten some discussion back and forth. Sorry, that link was a little bit long. What we summary is there are 5 organizations that have applied to be notaries. These organizations also have LDNs. There has been some argument about are we confident in these organizations? Is it safe to onboard them as notaries? How is their behavior as their LDNs? And we have really, similar to what we're asking in all these other conversations, is just for some, clarity and disclosures. So I put like a sample table in, and if we could, I think the next best step here is for those 5 organizations to specifically put in that issue 571 their sort of disclosure information. That will help us then see, this organization, ND Labs, is applying to be a notary. They have also submitted an LDN. They have also, worked with these storage providers. So I think that's a question there. We're asking those notaries to reply in that issue directly. Then, sorry, we're not going to take a lot of discussion topic on that one. We'll come back to it. We haven't made any firm decisions on that. So we're asking for more information from those 5. Kara, if you could go to the next slide. So then there was another request here. I think Kara and I actually miscommunicated earlier. So Project Bearded from the sealed storage team, they had sort of an updated request. So if you remember, Seal Storage has 3 different projects that they're kind of running right now. There's Antarctic, Bearded, and Baikal. Those LDNs are in progress. They're primarily working right now on Bearded and ingesting that data while also ingesting the large data set for Antarctic. They gave an update 2 weeks ago about that and how that one, sort of where they are in that process. They have requested to increase the amount of data cap for Project Bearded. They initially thought that they would need 6.9 PIBs. After doing the work to start to ingest and seal, they're realizing that they need more data cap because it's going to be a larger file. So they're requesting that one of their issues is increased by 3.1, and to just say we need some more data cap for this specific issue. So I think if you have right now, that's the conversation. It looks like it was happening in number 327. But then, yeah, if you could go weigh in on that, some strong thoughts or opinions would be great. I think right now it doesn't seem like a huge increase, and we'd like to, investigate. We understand how, it looks like there's some conversation in here from Faye and Deep about possibly restructuring how graph split or how the car files are being generated might be another way to solve this. That could also be a long-term solution, and a short-term solution for this project might be just increasing it by 3.1 PIBs while we also work with that. Then we have just 3 minutes left. Carrie, I think there was one more slide that I had in there. Okay, yes. So I know today is July 26th. So from our Phil Plus day, it has been pretty much 6 weeks. And if you remember, one of the things we talked about on Phil Plus day as a potential new change and update was organizing around 6-week sprints. So we have sprinted a lot these past 6 weeks. There have been a lot of changes. You've heard about some of them even today with Enterprise Phil, with some of these changes on how to support encrypted data, with some of the new tooling updates that we've heard about. So at the next Notary governance call, as promised, not the next one today, the next 2 weeks from now, which will also be the August, so those will be different times. We will be giving that sort of 6-week sprint update. What did we hit? What did we miss? And what is the priority for the next 6 weeks? So with that, we're pretty much right at time. I know there have been a lot of great discussions and questions in the chat. Please go check out the discussion topics, check out our Slack channel, add your questions, comments, and concerns in the relevant issues. Thanks everybody for another great governance call. Deep, K-Ray, Raghav, any closing thoughts?
No, lots of interesting conversations happening. Thank you all for participating. Let's keep it going. More discussion is good right now, so let's do it.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Well, good afternoon. Good morning. Welcome to the 14th Notary Governance Sync of 2022. Today is July, 26th. This is a very full session. This is the second call of the day. So if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're coming in live, we have another prior recording to this. The topic of agenda for this call is very similar to the others. We start out with metrics. We talk about some of the issues that were flagged by the community, and we hopefully save time at the end for any open issues that people want to flag for this call. The members of your governance team are here: Deep, Galen, myself, and Rajef. We will be here to help you steward any part of the process that you need. Reach out to us on Slack and GitHub, or always Slack us on this call as we go forward. But we are your friendly Protocol Labs and Filecoin Foundation community help. With that, you might notice that there is an addition on the line that pops up from Otter. What we are testing is a pilot for these calls to have a transcript recorded. So just wanted to give a courtesy note that in addition to this call being recorded and put on YouTube, we will be pulling some of the transcripts to hopefully translate that into Mandarin and foreign language support. So if you sit on the call, that's why it's coming through. The second friendly request is sometimes it's helpful to come back to these calls and be like, was this person on the call? Was this person not? This plays in a large part of the attendance that we'll talk about as we go through. So if your name happens to read like mine right now, if you could add anything to your name that lets us know where you're from or how to link you. So I just changed mine on the call by right-clicking it from Kevin to Kevin at Filecoin Foundation. So that way, if in a few months we thought you weren't here, you could easily come back and say, yes, it was, and we can track it and link the comments. Strictly optional, but just makes this call a little bit more productive for everybody listening. So with that, if you are on this call, you might have got a DM from me in the last week just saying, hey, here's the calls that we were tracking you were a part of. Here's where you're participating in the community. This is the way that I was pulling those metrics. So if you were a notary, please, 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 this will count for your SLA on that application. Go to this form and you fill out, hey, I came to the call on this day and this time. And at the end of the calls, I'll scrub that and I'll say which notaries were on the call at which time. If for any reason you didn't fill this out in weeks past, just message me in that DM that we have and I'll be sure to help you get that corrected. But we're just going to post the link here in Slack. Thank you, Galen. And that's just a quick way that you can mark down for attendance. So with that, let's dive into the meat of the call. The first thing is metrics. So at a very high level, we talk about 4 key numbers that we're looking at for the kind of health and growth of the program. The first one is the average time to data cap. You'll see that we're still hovering around that 3 or 4 day mark, totally in line for somebody applying and asking for that data. The second number that we look at is the average time to LDN data cap. In weeks previous, this was around the 5-day mark. 2 or 3 weeks ago, it bumped up to 7, and we called that out on the notary call. Now it's right around that 10. We have isolated this to a couple of issues that were outstanding and pending approval. So Galen sent a message on Slack in the Phil Notary's private channel a couple of days ago. We'll probably follow up with some tags, but if you were looking for an application to kind of sign off, those ones that Galen marked in Slack were there for a reason, just to kind of see why we can drive that 10 number down from 10 to get it a lot faster. The total amount of data cap that's coming into the Phil Plus and the Filecoin ecosystem is still steadily growing. Week over week, we see about 0.3 to 0.12 average. This week's no exception, so nothing to call out as far as sharp drops or sharp increases to the amount of data that we're bringing onto the network across that 4 petabyte scale. With this is just calling out what numbers we're looking on in the back end, Galen, Deeper, Jeff, and myself, on how we can kind of look at these. These come from the statistics page, the interplanetary dashboard. If you're looking for this slide deck that I'm talking about right now, this is in Slack in the Phil Plus channel. So if you want to get any of the links that I'm talking about, you could see this or any of the other numbers that we talk about in the call. So with that, this is the agenda that we're looking to cover for today. 6 issues. 2 of them really quick. Then we have an update from Kevin and Meg on the enterprise proposal team. Kevin's put together some slides to walk through. Galen will walk us and Deep will walk us through an introduction to Project Beacon. We'll talk about the current status. There was a lot of discussion over the weekend in GitHub, and there was a lot of conversation about how this plays out, and we'll address that on the call. Galen will walk us through notary issues. These are some of the investigations that we're doing and trying to keep the program clean. And then Galen will walk us through issue 327 and the LDN process and the bearded application that comes. So with that, let's jump in. And as always, if you have a question as we go through these, feel free to unmute your line. What's even more helpful is if you raise one of your hands in Slack. That way Galen, Deep, and myself can go through and make sure that you're all set as we go. So with that, today is July 26th, and the States, starting in August, this call is going to shift from 4 p.m. 2300 to 6 p.m. 0100 Beijing time. The goal of this is to make it more conducive for a majority of the Chinese participants who are dialing in and find this at a really inconvenient 0700 time for them. So right now we have around 13, 14 people on the call. We're going to pilot this in August and see if we get that participation number up without losing you loyal callers at this time. So just as a heads up, you can follow the link to the Google Calendar. I've got that linked in Slack. And it looks like, Galen, you were so quick, my friend. Galen already put it in chat. If you add this calendar, this will pop up and you can see all the links to the Notary Governance Sync. And you'll notice that if we go forward 1 month into August, it'll change to that 6 p.m. time frame. So nothing you have to update in your record. It'll auto do that. So just as a heads up, as a reminder, in 2 weeks, this meeting shifts. A callback to an issue that we had last week, and this was, how does the community and the Plus program process changes to some of the applications and some of the rules that we have that are soft and not material in the program change? So we proposed this 568. There was a lot of discussion, and essentially this is notaries who did not apply for re-election in the third, that are in good standing, that are participating, have no fraudulent activity or any kind of outstanding questions, can they be added to the LDN v3? So we had a lot of discussion that was captured. A lot of you have voted this on the issue. This was just one final call out. And I think the flag that I would make for all of you that are considering this, it's less about these two people and it's less about their access to LDN. And it's more about, as a community, how are we making these soft changes to make sure that it can grow and stable, and people that want to participate are unblocked as quickly as possible? Because the alternative to this is having these notary elections very regularly in order to kind of update that, which feels like it's a lot of lift on you as notaries to put through that election, as well as a lot of lift on our part to score it and go through it properly. So this proposal, at the root issue, it's just, as a community, how do we feel about these small changes that we make? So this is your chance to weigh in on that 568. So pending any discussion with this, would be most likely to take it to GitHub or Slack. That way we can tease it out. I wanted to save as much time on this call for Galen and Deep to flag, for Kevin to start off with the enterprise proposal. So Kevin, I'll turn it over to you, my friend.
Thank you, Kevin. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Kevin Z. I work for Protocol Labs on client growth operations, and recently I've taken over the lead of the enterprise pilot that most of you know about. And Meg, I see Meg is on the call. Meg Dennis has done a great job of setting up the foundations for this project over the past few months to get us where we are today. So I just wanted to spend the next 5 to 10 minutes just going over where we are and what's coming up in the next few months, some exciting stuff. I know everyone's interested in enterprise and building this out to be a solution that works for Plus. So Kevin, if you could please go to the next slide. So I won't spend much time here, but this is just an overview of kind of where we've come from. The idea that, and Meg has presented this proposal, number 559, please go to that and reread through, if you haven't already, the details of the proposal and what we're looking to put together here. But the idea is there's a lot of opportunity with non-public data in the enterprise world, and we're looking to put together a solution that will help fit the needs of that, along with sort of editing some of the Plus processes and making that all come together. So over the next 3 months or so, we're looking to, we had this proposal that's been approved, it's been reviewed. The next phase of it is now called the planning phase, which on the next slide, I'll go into a lot more detail. But over the next 2 to 3 months, we really want to set this program up for success, to design the requirements and the needs of the client experience of the SP-led pilot. And there's a lot of decisions that need to be made. And that's why we're opening this up to the community for discussions starting today and through the next few months. So the idea is between now and October timeframe, we'll set up the planning phase, we'll get everything ready to go, and then we'll kick off the pilot in October for a 6-month period of a proof of concept. Next slide. Okay, now number 580, I put together several new discussion topics. These are the details that I just wanted to quickly go through with everyone and the timeline here. So first of all, the idea is we're looking to have a set of notaries that are involved in this upcoming pilot. And there's several that have expressed interests. We've messaged them in GitHub. We're putting together a group that are going to help participate in the pilot as notaries. There's a set of service level expectations that we've put together that they're committing to being a part of this. Most of it is just, spending time each week looking at these specific applications and things like that. There's also several proposals that will be part of this pilot that we need to flush out between now and when the pilot starts. So there's this idea of designating a lead SP. There's a proposal for data distribution rules, having the client be upfront with their data, how they want their data stored, how they want their data retrieved, all the details to be part of a contract where we can manage from the beginning. There's also enterprise data cap allocation enhancements that we want to discuss. And again, these are all open for everyone to go into. These discussion topics, please provide any feedback, questions that you have. I think the idea right now, today, I'm just giving an overview of what's going on. In 2 weeks from now, I'd love to come back on the governance call and have a little bit broader discussion on some of these proposals. Once everyone had a chance to review them, and we can talk through this a little bit more together as a community. One of the other big pieces of this that'll be kicking off August 1st. Kevin, if you could just click on the link there. So we're asking SPs that want to be a part of this pilot to go through the eligibility and expressive of interest details. And so there's a web page I put together that sort of highlight who we're looking to be able to include as part of SPs, as part of clients. There's a lot of details about the timeline, the phases that we're looking to set this up as. So again, this is all part of a larger proposal that we'd love to just get feedback and buy-in on. So I ask everyone to go through all this. There's a lot out there. There's a lot of information to go through. So if you have any questions, please let me know. But for SPs, it's going to be really important for them. I know there's been a lot of people that have come to me and to come to others in the community that are super interested in kicking this off. So we're pushing this forward, as best we can, making sure we have the proper guardrails in place. Then moving through August, we want to go through our customer journey review, make sure we have the requirements, start to set up the tech and tooling that are needed to enhance an enterprise solution and the pilot. So having a KYC automation solution, having a better landing page for clients to come to apply and provide their information that can be supported by SPs there. There's going to be a chunk of this is going to be involving legal and setting up contracts, templates that, again, SPs and clients will need to utilize. We talked about the data distribution rules. And so as we work through all that over the next few months, there'll be several meetings, working groups. There's a Slack channel I'll talk about on the next slide. But the goal is to get through this, and then by October, if everything works out how we like it, we'll kick off the pilot with a phase 1, which is 25 SPs and clients through a 6-month period. And we'll sort of test what we've set up. We'll gather feedback. We'll see how things are going. We're using an MVP and sort of solution to think through design thinking as well in terms of, we're going to have a rough concept, and through iterations, we'll be able to learn, improve, enhance this process to make it better. So by the end of the pilot, we can have something that we're all comfortable with and proud of to push out and build trust moving forward. Next slide, please. So that's it. I'll post this presentation. And again, there's several new discussion topics under the eFil Plus working group heading under the Notary Governance GitHub. Please take some time to review those, provide any feedbacks or questions that you have. Again, the goal will be to come back in 2 weeks' time, spend a little bit more time, maybe have some time for an open discussion on some of those specific topics that might be, need some more discussion openly. There's also a Slack channel that we have, an open Slack channel that feel free to join. I'll be posting information there as well. So I'll stop there. I'll open it up if there's any questions or comments. All right. Thanks, everyone. Kevin, back to you.
We have one hand.
Oh,
It's a predictable one. Hello, hi, Kevin. It's Danny. So
Hey,
one of
Danny.
the things that I'm interested in sort of tracking, and I think actually to be clear, like this, the description of the SP constraints kind of actually answers my concern, but I am a little worried that a system like this, which will actually be sort of inviting the perhaps or attracting the majority of Filecoin Plus like rewards, will tend to go to the most sort of professional and larger storage providers and kind of tend to centralize just because there's such a huge gradient between that and standard deals. And I wonder if that is part of the considerations you're applying into the into how you're structuring this.
It's a good question. I think, yeah, that's something we need to talk through a little bit more. Obviously, it will lean towards more of the SPs that can support larger enterprise level data onboarding, right? To be a part of this, to be eligible. But I think, we're open to whatever or whoever wants to be a part of this and pilot this. I think there's opportunity to test different use cases. Obviously, we'll have the larger ones, but it's open to whoever wants to be a part. So if you have any thoughts on how to make it more inclusive or any way to think about that, please, let us know.
Yeah, and to be clear, like I thought, I like the entry that it seems a pretty low bar right now. I'm just like, this is just my little drum that I hit with all of these things where there's an
Yeah, no, it's
opportunity
good.
for a particular group. So thank you for bearing that
Thank
in
you.
mind.
I had like potential follow-up comment on that. Like Danny, I wonder if there are ways that social impact project partners could also potentially be brought to like this enterprise opportunity, and if there are ways that groups that the foundation is working with could sort of be good like test cases.
Yeah, this is when I swap my head around because I do a bunch of work for the 501c3, the FFDW, and yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that there's a real. I think this isn't just a model for enterprise as we usually think of it, but just large organizations of all kinds, including nonprofits and people working on public good provision who have these large data sets. So yeah, I agree.
Meg, I see your hand.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Danny.
Oh no. What were you just going to say?
I'll Slack Meg and let her
Yeah.
know if she froze.
I think
Oh, wait.
she's back.
She might be back.
Sorry, frozen. That's always a good look. Danny, the pilot is to sort out a lot of the processes. So it's almost like flying the plane while we're still building it. And sometimes to do that, we go for what is simple, especially in the first couple. I think Kevin's thinking about 25 companies in the first and then opening up more broadly in a second tranche. So we want to consider all extremes, but design for the mainstream. And so limit how much complexity there is when there's such a small team and no one to service it in.
We might have to come back. Sorry, Meg, I don't know if you can hear us. You're cutting in and out. I think we may have to try and circle back. We'll see if there's some time later on. We can also take this one async. Sorry, Meg. Thanks, Danny and KZ. This next topic around Project Beacon, Deep, did you want to kick us off with this one and recap?
Yeah, sure. So we had a lot of active conversation on this one, a lot of interesting conversations and questions being posed. It seemed like we were working towards a mechanism to get data cap out for this particular project, but then Jonathan, who's actually on the call today, asked some pretty good questions on like the structuring of the video files and brought up some relevant points, and that sort of kicked off like several different threads, which was great to see the engagement even over a weekend. And like I think we had a pretty productive sort of conversation back and forth to try and get to the bottom of the particular use case here. For those of you that aren't following the thread, this was initially pitched as like educational content being onboarded, about 11 petabytes of it, with 5 replicas intended to be stored. And I think through a bunch of back and forth, what we've learned is it's, in addition to like classroom recordings, it's also recordings of educational institutions overall. And so there's some flagging of like potential misrepresentation of what the actual data was. And then there was some conversation back and forth on the value of that. And then in line with that, there's also a conversation on like the process for this particular case, the notaries that were choosing to support it, and whether or not like the SPs that had been chosen were also reputable and like the data set could move forward. In this morning's governance call, Eric, who's like the sort of notary partner for this particular application, gave a little bit of an overview of like the storage provider side of the house, where he talked through why a lot of the SP IDs look like they are net new SPs and where that's coming from, and then also talk through some of the complexity around data storage and why like it has to stay in China, because Wynand also posed the question of, hey, if it's encrypted, can we store it outside? And so that was addressed as well. And so where we stand on this right now is basically there's a couple of notaries that are still waiting to react to the thread as far as we know. Like I think, Jonathan, you might be one of the people as well between you and Mag that was looking at signing an NDA and seeing the data underneath. And so there's a couple of outstanding opinions to come in based on people that have signed an NDA and have been privy to the data itself. There's also some clarity still required on who the storage providers are that this client is like working with. There was a proposal after the meeting this morning from Wynand as well on GitHub, where he spent some time talking with Eric and the client, I think, and there seems to be a sense of urgency where maybe we want to do a little bit of data cap initially to vet this out and see how it goes as well. But yeah, overall, still a work in progress as far as I'm concerned. And my opinion is that I still think there's some clarification required before we proceed. Also, as part of the discussion on this, there was a lot of interesting ideas thrown around how we could improve the process, some of which I think will end up influencing the Enterprise Fill Plus effort with KZ and Meg. So you two should definitely keep your eyes on this one and see how it evolves. And then JH from Hold, Jonathan also had some ideas around how we could improve and introduce notary staking and incentives by way of this. And so for that, we've kicked off like a separate discussion topic in the notary governance repo. So definitely join us in there if you have any ideas as we continue to make this process easier and smoother. Cool. Any thoughts, concerns, questions, follow-ups? There's a hand from Alex. What's up, Alex?
Yeah, so I have a question. Did you have already some thoughts around notaries and clients signing NDAs and these kinds of agreements? Did you have like any thoughts on the complexities and like providing some kind of guidance or any advice for notaries around like signing contracts and signing NDAs and whatnot?
Yeah, interesting question. So this came up like in February of this year, I would say, when we were working to see how or whether or not we'd support some of Seal's data cap applications, like specifically the data cap application that came in for Project Antarctic, where they started out with this suggestion of, hey, like we can come up with an NDA mechanism that would work for certain notaries, and notaries can come back and sort of serve that opinion back to the community. And at that point in time, we also had like a meetup around South by Southwest where we had a Fill Plus specific session and had like a pretty lengthy conversation on this topic. And the takeaway from that was basically, hey, like you're a notary, you're choosing to volunteer in this position to work in this community. You have a fiduciary duty to the network. We're hoping that you're acting in the best interest of the networks. In the best interest of the network, and that you're incentive aligned to continue doing that. If in your capacity you are willing to sign an NDA and that helps you build confidence with the client, like that is the legwork of the client to effectively even convince you to give them the opportunity to earn your trust. And so at that point in time, the conversation was more around, hey, it's an open process. If you're willing to do it, then great, then go for it, kind of a thing.
Can't that be something that be exclusive of excluding notaries that don't have that capacity, like to handle signing complex agreements and whatnot?
I don't
This was
know.
also
only
brought up
Yeah.
in February, and there was some question around that, and some of the conversation was around if a notary is not comfortable or willing to do that, or feels that there is risk to them in one way or another, then they can have the ability to make that choice. And that PL and the foundation right now are not mandating that it is required for a notary to participate in the program by doing NDAs. We're also not the ones drafting those NDAs or like providing legal counsel on like what an NDA they should sign. And so it is an ongoing question of like, how will that evolve in the future? And that is something that I know the enterprise program has talked about having contracts. And so in that case, that enterprise program will need to be piloting what some of those contracts and stipulations would look like, who is going to write them, who's going to source them, how much can those contracts be standardized, things like that. But for right now, like there's no expectation that all notaries will always need to sign NDAs or have that level of kind of legal expertise in order to participate broadly in the project. It's just something that has come up a few times as a possibility for when there is a private client or when there is private data. So I think the big kind of outstanding question here is for Project Beacon. There was like some discussion around, is it, a valid use case of Filecoin if it's private and encrypted education data? And then the question is it actually private encrypted education data based on the amount of data that they're asking for? And there was some back and forth on kind of validating that, and the clients providing some more details based on number of cameras. I think there were questions around, is that education data or is that security footage? And then there was a discussion around, what's the difference? This is a different kind of cultural context. When a lot of people hear education data, they think kind of one camera, one lecture, which is not necessarily the same thing. And then the conversation this morning really being around, if it's encrypted, why not export it and distribute it to other international SPs? And that was a question that turned into a conversation about, well, exporting that kind of sensitive data is also illegal according to certain Chinese regulations. So really the discussion as it has wrapped up from this morning and is continuing to go on today is trying to see, are there some other existing notaries in other regions that would like to help perform some more diligence on this? And so there has been a call out to some of those. Some notaries have offered to jump onto this specific project.
I guess I understand that it's not being required to sign NDAs or anything, but it's from what I'm seeing from the new applications that are coming in, they are basically applying for requesting a data cap for private data, and I
think you might be seeing some of the applications that are being discussed on governance calls. We get about 3 to 4 large data set applications a day that don't need to get discussed on these calls. And we also get, I can't remember the number, however many, 20 a month direct notary applications that go straight to the notaries, where the notaries are performing that diligence in GitHub that also don't require NDAs and are not being discussed here. So while there are an increasing number of these kinds of conversations, this Project Beacon has been a conversation for months. And so this has been a large 60 pib conversation for months. which is why it takes a lot of attention. And projects like that take a lot of attention and have a lot of potential risk are going to attract more conversation, but then require a higher amount of commitment from the notaries that are in it versus the notaries that are getting application requests that don't require this level of conversation and don't need to be discussed in this kind of a call.
Yeah, I'm not saying that every request that is coming in goes through this process, but I see that it is something that is increasing the number of applications that are being suggested to sign NDAs and look at the data, and I'm seeing not every application, but I'm seeing that some of those requests that are new requests that are coming in are coming with suggestions to applying for private data cap for use with private data, and they are being suggested to sign NDAs and whatnot. So my worry is that we kind of let the program run into a problem where most of the requests are coming in only for not only, but the majority for private data, and that involving signing NDAs and complex agreements without like legal
Alex, I gotta
advice
cut you off
whatnot.
because that's what I'm saying is most of the applications and most of the things that are coming in are not for private and encrypted data. It's just that there are some that are really
Can I add?
And so we're trying to like work on like what are the process that we can learn from these like projects like Seal, projects like Project Beacon that are sort of new, net new. Deep, go ahead.
Thank you. So Alex, I was just going to say, even in like the future that you're concerned about, which is like, say we got a majority case of like people needing to sign NDAs or majority case private data applications, I don't think that's a problem. I think that's like us deciding to figure out like the right way we need to serve that. Number two, if that means more notaries have to be comfortable signing NDAs or more notaries are choosing to opt in or opt out, also not a problem. Like the scale of notaries in the notary program should continue to grow. And then thirdly, I think the NDA process today is kind of like a stopgap in like we're still figuring out the right way to handle this. So like specifically the work that KZ and Meg are doing should potentially, hopefully alleviate the stress or the need for this in every single case. Like maybe there are other ways in which we can build that trust, right? Like the NDA in a way, like it may feel complex, but in a way it is also the simplest way in which you build trust, which is, hey, I'm legally enforcing you don't talk about anything, so I can give you open trust. So you can ask me whatever you want. And so as we build better proxies for that, the need for that will decrease. But I would flag that even if the need doesn't decrease, I don't think that's a problem. Like ultimately, like this is like in a way, this is an open marketplace of trust building. Like you can find the provider that's willing to meet you where you are as a source of demand. And so theoretically, as long as we cast our net wide enough to create a supply of notaries that are interested enough in a variety of different applications, should be okay.
Yeah, I just think that we got to be aware of where things are going. We don't have to stop that from happening, but we can plan ahead for some guidance on what's the building some guidelines and whatnot. And I guess a lot of that will go through the So
okay, cool.
Yeah, but that's like a risk thing that I'm
I don't think
getting
it's a
worried
risk.
about.
I don't think it's a risk. I do agree with you that we should have guidance. But yeah, I would suggest take it up in the eFil discussions thing or ping KZ or Meg directly. I know Meg also specifically did some thinking on this topic way back in February. So I would suggest let's continue the conversation there.
Yeah, thank you. Kevin, can we move forward one slide? I think this next one, we've only
Actually, one second, before we hop on, I just want to call out, Jonathan's on the call. I know that he specifically had flagged a couple of things in the GitHub issue as like, hey, it would be good to talk about this. Jonathan, the client's not on the call. Eric did do some sort of representation in the morning session, and that's recorded. So I suggest you definitely catch up with that. I also posted some stuff in GitHub, went and also followed up in GitHub. So for Beacon specifically, I would say check out the GitHub issue. For the topics that you've raised through this conversation, I think we should continue engaging in discussions because you had some really good ideas on that. And I'd love to make sure we go somewhere with this stuff around overall notary incentives and overall like mechanisms for KYC. But I did want to give you 30 seconds if there's anything in particular you wanted to flag on this recorded line on this topic.
No, so I followed up with Vinian this morning. He was pretty happy. I think we're at the point where I'm going to sign an NDA, look at some data, and then go from there. You know, ultimately, you know, when people put applications in for data cap, they need to be transparent about the data sets. And also, and if the data sets are 11 petabytes, you need an exact breakdown, because obviously 11 petabytes is over 36,000 sectors, and nobody's going to check 36,000 sectors for proper data, right? So yeah, we just need proper breakdown on that project for the 11 pib. If it goes down to a lot smaller size, obviously we need to do less checking. But ultimately, you know, we still need to know who are the SPs, who is the lead SP, who is distributing, who is managing, and you know, retrieving is not fine, but long term, you know, we need a white list of, you know, what is going to get through easily and what's not going to get through easily, because this feels like it's like some of the data set, not all of the data set. It is not as useful as some of it, right? So that's why we just need a transparent breakdown. But
Thank you.
I'll keep working with Vinian and the rest and go from there.
I had a quick clarifying question just on one of the things that you mentioned about signing an NDA to look at some of the data. Currently in that discussion, we have like a couple notary names and notary addresses that we were going to put on that multisig. Are you guys saying that Holon and like Meg's notary address, you would like to be added to that multisig to be doing the diligence? So Wyman had said that he would like to be added to that multisig.
So step one, I'd like to I said I'd sign the NDA and I'd start looking at the data and carry on the conversation. Step two, when we're at that point, I'll chat to Meg. For full clarity, I stay well away from Meg's notary role because I sit on the storage side, not the notary side. However, you know, long term, our business, like every SP in this whole community, is relying on more verified deals, not only because we want to make this network as big and as powerful as possible, but ultimately we actually lose money today putting capacity on the network, right? So this is a lifeline for us. So yeah, step one, we'll just look at it. Step two, I'll see what Meg thinks.
That's what I thought you meant, and I just wanted to like make sure to clarify that I did not have a false understanding. So thanks.
No worries. And while I've got the mic here, I'm just going to take 10 seconds. Long term, I'm a firm believer that as we stake file on the storage provider side, and I've said on GitHub, we fear Windows post every 24 hours because we try and do the best, and when those go into faults, we start losing money. And when you're a multi-petabyte miner, that's a scary place. I do believe Notary should be staking long term to have skin in the game and to kind of check data as well. That aligns notaries with the network like it aligns storage providers with the network. But I'll carry that conversation on with Deep in the incentives channel.
Plus one, big fan. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Ray. Cool, thank you. So Notary disclosures issue 571. This was brought up. I don't think we're going to have a lot of time for an open discussion on this one here. What we are asking for those 5 notaries that are called out in this issue that have applied to be notaries, have kind of said how they have some relationships and have brought different partners to like Project Gravity and referred different partners to different parts of the Filecoin network. We just want to get a clear picture of, if this is your notary address, what are your storage provider relationships and what are your client addresses, because all of these partners also have large data sets. And so part of this is just making sure that if you are acting as a notary, that we have clear representation so that we can see the types of projects that you should not be signing for certain clients. And then if you are signing or working with clients, how those clients are going back to certain storage providers. So we've asked those organizations to put their disclosures all in one place in issue 571, and we will continue sort of reviewing that and working on it. But we are running low on time. We have some other topics to hit. So if we could jump ahead one more slide, please. Great. I think I saw a member from the SEAL team on the line, but maybe they had to drop. This was brought up in one of the comments in their GitHub issue. So Project Bearded was initially, they had requested a total of 6.9 PIDs, but then through working on sealing this and working on the car files, they have identified that they need more space. And so they have just requested and made a proposal to increase from what was 1.9 up to 5 to give the entire Bearded project a total of 10. So really this is just a proposal to add 3.1 PIDs to this large data set multi-signature so that it has a total of 10 available. I think that I would like some other people to look at some of the technical information here and see what that means. I don't know that we would be able to solve things regarding this kind of technical change if it needs sort of a fit on the time scale that these groups are talking about. So really, I think that the fundamental question here is just, are we comfortable? They initially asked for a certain amount. As they started onboarding, they realized that their onboarding rate and kind of total overall size for this project was going to increase. It's going to increase by 3.1, which is not a huge order of magnitude by any means, to go from basically almost 7 PIBs to 10, but it is an increase. So I do think that we want to hear from that team. I don't see them on the line. Alex, did you have a quick question, clarifying question on this one?
Do you know if they can do this running, asking for doing another application, or does it have to be on the same?
They have 2 applications open. They could open another application if they wanted. That to me feels like it's just more overhead, because then we would just create yet another multi-sig to give 3.1 rather than just topping this one up. So this isn't a request to get 3 PIBs all at once. This is them just saying, could we increase what is available to us at the top of the funnel? And they would keep getting that allocation calculation. So they could put in another application if that's the direction the community wanted to push them. But like personally, I feel like that's more admin when all they're doing is saying, can we have 3 extra PIBs? They're doing that already.
But that's essentially a new application, right? Because they would be getting more data cap. So
they would be putting more data cap
is because they need more data cap. But how do you get data cap right now? You have to request it, right?
Right. And so this would still be requesting. So this would still be going into the application. This is just changing. When the application said we want 1.9, they're changing that to say from 1.9, we want 5. And so that's just changing what is available at the top of the funnel to them.
And that application has already ended, or is it?
Nope, that application is still in progress. Yes. That application, they have started receiving allocations, and they have not reached the max amount yet. They have not reached 6.9, but they are starting to see that as they are sealing, they underestimated how much they needed. So it's kind of like, we have seen this before where working with Slingshot projects, some clients that were working with Slingshot, helping do projects like Slingshot Restore, they anticipated that their weekly onboarding rate would be 100. And then they realized that wasn't getting them enough data cap fast enough and long enough, and they could onboard faster. So they asked to increase their weekly rate. And so we just increased the weekly rate. It didn't mean that they suddenly got more data cap without doing anything. The notaries still have to sign and review for each data cap allocation.
But I get the feeling that this should be following the process that we already have for getting that data cap, because that the process already exists and they are essentially getting more data cap. So I think the proper way would be to follow like the regular processes that we already have. I don't know. That's my take on it, at least for now.
Jonathan, did you unmute? Did you have? Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So look, I'm not going to speak to this thing, but I'm just we're actually on this project and we're storing data. So I'm not going to talk to this. I'm just going to talk to the general thing of taking enterprise customer and going from A to B. It's hard. We've had to build software to automate downloading petabytes of data in a very seamless way, right? We're checking corrupt files, we're putting them in the right places. That software took us about, a week, 2 weeks to get right. We then had to build pipeline software. So we take that downloaded software and feed it into the Lotus miner, multiple Lotus miners, as quickly as possible. So we had to build that. That was another couple of weeks. We had to upgrade our pipes from like a couple of gigabytes to 20 gigabytes. We had to tell the ISP to update their upstream traffic so we could get data correctly. I had to employ a new engineer to make sure all the deals were happening properly. We had to buy new downloading kit because we needed, 2 petabytes of storage to manage all this data coming in. Wow, you learn a lot when you go from terabytes, gigabytes to multi-petabytes. In the last 3 months, we've effectively gone from somebody that thinks they're in storage to somebody that can compete with Amazon, taking multiple petabytes every month. So it's okay for us to not know all the parameters at the start. And Holon, and probably Seal, we're all happy to share all the things that we had to build to get this over the line, right? This is, my head of engineering, Anthony Smith, has worked every day for the last 4 months, right, just to make this thing work. So for Seal to go, yeah, we didn't know this at the beginning, is perfectly acceptable.
Deep. Thanks, Jonathan. Deep.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things I wanted to flag. Number one, I have heard some concerns overall around like projects that get outsized data cap, like this being one of them, where it's like, upfront there was like a request for Antarctic for 50 petabytes or for this for like 10 petabytes or whatever. And then there's like learnings that come around the path, around the way, and adjustments that need to be made in the process. I think that first point I'd like to call out is it's really important for us to be transparent as a community. So I actually think it's great that they're sharing this and like updating this. I would, though, have liked to see the process itself be talked about. Like there's a lot of people that onboard this amount of data very, very quickly and don't have these issues, because there's people that are experienced and have been able to do this in the past. There's tools that exist that are much more sophisticated than some of the dependencies that I think Seal might be taking. And so, hey, Seal folks, if you're watching this call, I think it's great that you're being transparent about this and stuff, but I think you could also be a little proactive about like the process and engaging folks in the ecosystem about it. And Jonathan, same thing goes to you. Like if there's stuff that you're doing that you're stuck on, I think you should maybe use the community a bit and like outsource some of the complexity to it and see where people are at. Personally, I work on slingshot stuff. We work on coming up with tools that should help with onboarding at scale. I'd be happy to have that conversation. Second thing I'd want to call out is there's an element around like base of work, which there's some sort of expectation in the LDN process, right? Like there's a subtle sort of math here that every client is always doing when they apply. And so this is not directly related to Bearded, but a general comment where it's everyone is a timeline and everyone is sort of pricing in complexity into that timeline. And Filecoin Plus itself introduces complexity in that timeline where it's like, oh, I need to go get data cap. It's going to take me X amount of time. Then I need to process the data. It'll take me Y amount of time. Then I'm going to go and store that data. It'll take me Z amount of time. And then I got to work back from that and come up with some sort of reasonable estimate and take that dependency. And what we're trying to do, part of why we do all this measurement, part of why we're trying to make these iterations is to bring down that X and also make that X significantly more transparent. And similarly, I think we'd like to see that follow through to the rest of the process as well. At some point in time, a FIP was passed, right, in February, integrated in February and March, passed at the end of the last calendar year to say, hey, let's remove data cap from clients that may introduce like a network risk. And part of that is also latent data cap sitting around at large volumes. Like if you look at data cap like given to client wallets today versus that stored in deals, it's about 80%, like all data cap is actually used in deals already. And that's pretty good. There was a point in time where that number was like 30% or 40%, which was more of a threat. But as we move closer and closer to 80, that's great, as long as we can get that time to data cap number down. But that also means when you have substantive like processes that have gone through that are just sitting latent on data cap, we should also consider the consequences of that and have part of that FIP. There was a discussion around, hey, like, is 6 months of sitting around with data cap and not doing anything a problem? And the answer is yes, of course it's a problem, but then it's like, what do we do about it? How do we engage the right teams to ensure that that client can fall into the pit of success, or like the SP working with that client can ensure that they have the resources they need to engage and bring that data on board? Or does that client actually need the data cap at this point in time? Is it even relevant? Like, what are our cleanup processes and our cleanup tools that we're doing to ensure that we're not creating threat vectors for the movement of data cap or the movement of the Filecoin token price for that matter? And so general flags, not trying to disagree with anything being said, just calling out some additional stuff.
Yeah, I think it's these are all great points. I think we would like to hear from the SEAL team. We have the discussion, we have that issue there where people can go weigh in, and maybe we need to open another discussion or proposal topic on this and kind of reach a decision at the next Notary governance call. I think there was one more slide in here, Kere, and that is to say that today being July 26th, believe it or not, we have completed this 6-week, this is the end last week, the 6-week sprint. This came out of one of the conversations from Phil Plus Day and some of the ways that we were hoping to organize and focus the work. You may remember we were giving some of those bucket areas of things that we were doing. So the plan at the next Notary governance call in August, which will be the second one, will be at that later time slot, is we'll give sort of a more comprehensive picture on what we accomplished in the 6-week sprint and what we were working on for the next 6-week sprint. So with that, we have just about 2 minutes left, maybe not a ton of time to hit community discussion topics. Lots of things covered today, lots of great discussion issues across different channels. Please go find those GitHub issues and Slack, add your questions and comments there. But as it is, I think that we are going to wrap this up rather than starting off another chat that we won't really be able to give full time to. So thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day, evening.
Thanks. See ya.